Welcome and thanks so much for joining in. My name is Amy Ruse-Cheung and I'm a clinical social worker and program specialist at Gilda's Club, Kansas City. What I'm going to present today is a condensed version of a class on post-traumatic growth, and we hope to be able to offer this class in person in its entirety in the future. So to start out, my guess is that many of us are familiar with post-traumatic stress disorder, in a nutshell, a type of anxiety disorder that some individuals may develop after experiencing a frightening or traumatic situation. So while post-traumatic stress disorder has the potential to affect those impacted by cancer, what we're going to be focusing on today is, of course, post-traumatic growth, or in short, PTG. So what is post-traumatic growth? In the mid-1990s, psychologists Richard Tedeschi and Lawrence Calhoun coined the term post-traumatic growth, which describes the positive psychological change that can occur as a result of a struggle with highly challenging, adverse life events. Another quote here from the article Post-Traumatic Growth in Cancer. The positive life changes that develop as a result of a stressful, frightening experience are called post-traumatic growth. The concept of the potential for positive change and meaning-making following frightening or challenging circumstances has been a theme in many traditions throughout history. However, what is more recent is the study of post-traumatic growth by professionals in different areas of practice. So, post-traumatic growth in cancer. The literature indicates that the concept of post-traumatic growth is applicable to the cancer experience. As you know, we can imagine cancer is an experience which can likely bring forth distress as well as growth. Wanted to also share a quote here from Anne Cosarelli's article, Finding Benefit, Post-Traumatic Growth in Cancer. It says, the cancer experience is a powerful one. It challenges the psychological, physical, and spiritual self and creates opportunities for change. Of course, this does not mean that by acknowledging positive changes after cancer implies that there is something great about cancer itself, only that there is room for the possibility of good to come from the experience. One of the other things I thought was good to mention was similar to the way in which caregivers or support people may be impacted by post-traumatic stress disorder. Loved ones, family systems, caregivers can also experience post-traumatic growth. I thought also it was important to speak a bit about what post-traumatic growth is not. It is not without acknowledgement that cancer is a scary, overwhelming, difficult experience. It's not about just maintaining a positive attitude at all times, just being happy at all times, etc. Experiencing the natural, broad scope of human emotion associated with a challenging event is absolutely within the expected range. And, being able to acknowledge and express all emotion is validating to our experiences. Our feelings and experiences don't just go away if they're denied, suppressed, or not acknowledged. Experiencing post-traumatic growth does not mean you're not going to have feelings that arise that are connected to the traumatic experience in the future. And experiencing growth or positive change after a trauma or difficult situation does not mean that one, of course, desires to go through that again. Just because an individual experiences positive change does not mean that there's not going to be distress, of course. Growth and struggle can and do happen concurrently. They can coexist in these polarities. This is a process too. Individuals may experience post-traumatic growth in different time, in different ways. It might not look the same for everybody. Some people might grow in one areas where others may see that growth has happened in different areas. Not everyone that experiences a trauma will experience post-traumatic growth. Very similar, of course, to the way that not everyone that experiences a trauma will develop post-traumatic stress disorder. Additionally, an individual can cope really well and not experience post-traumatic growth. So what's the difference between post-traumatic growth and resilience? Resilience seems to be, quite a buzzword these days, and so I thought it was important to just include this differentiation. The American Psychological Association's The Road to Resilience brochure indicates that, quote, resilience is a process of adapting well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, threats, or significant sources of stress. Further, it means a bouncing back from difficult experiences, whereas post-traumatic growth is a movement beyond one's adaptation before the trauma, a personal change in the individual beyond ability to bounce back or resist damage from circumstances. And then also here I've included a second quote from the article Post-Traumatic Growth in Cancer as well. Just another explanation, and it says, researchers note that post-traumatic growth is not the same as resilience. Resilience describes that bouncing back or returning to the previous level of functioning, but on the other hand, post-traumatic growth refers to a positive change of some kind. So, post-traumatic growth generally occurs in 5 areas or 5 kind of life dimensions. So the first one we'll talk about is new opportunities or experiences. And this area refers to opportunities that may arise from the struggle or develop a deeper awareness of new possibilities that might have not been present before the challenging situation. Individuals can experience a change in priorities after cancer or other, of course, traumatic or difficult event. Life choices may shift and change, maybe in the areas of career, a decision to fulfill a life goal, kind of engage in some of these kind of, quote, bucket list items. Secondly, there may be changed or improved relationships with others. So we're talking about the development or deepening a sense of closeness or intimacy with certain people, family, friends. Individuals may experience an increased sense of connection to others, experiencing difficulties, or a greater sense of empathy. Then there is an increase in the sense of personal strength. And so this area refers to increased in feelings of empowerment or a sense of accomplishment after overcoming or moving through a significant struggle. So sentiments such as, I've made it through this, so I can kind of make it through anything. That increased sense of confidence. Number 4, greater sense or greater appreciation for life. This area refers to experiencing an increased regard for life, awareness of maybe not taking time for granted, deeper understanding of the fragility of life. I think about this too as kind of that carpe diem, seizing the day type of awareness. When facing one's own mortality, that can come with trauma such as facing a life-threatening diagnosis, we may become more aware of those things that we feel are most important in life. And lastly, spiritual or religious changes, connection, development. I think about spirituality as anything that gives us meaning and purpose in life. Individuals can experience being drawn to or more deeply connected with their religion or faith, spiritual practice, or a desire to increase or cultivate a spiritual depth in their life. And I also wanted to share some sentiments that I've heard voiced related to experiences of growth kind of over the years. Again, that kind of change in perspective, or the way that an individual looks at the world, can be changed. Changes in priority, of course we talked about this a little bit before, changes in maybe life goals, relationships with self and others, this sense of maybe not putting up with some things that I used to, kind of putting some boundaries up for myself in a good way. Maybe not worrying so much about the smaller things that I used to worry about. A sense of not taking things for granted, not taking time for granted, sense of being more mindful about how I choose to spend my time and who I choose to surround myself with, choosing to engage in activities that are fulfilling, and possibly also an increased ability to create or find meaning in difficult events and to be able to cope successfully with some of the life difficulties. So loss, grief, and growth. I think too, when talking about growth following a difficult or traumatic situation, I also believe it important to acknowledge the potential for loss and grief. Oftentimes with major changes there are, of course, losses associated with those as well. So grief and growth are not mutually exclusive. They can occur concurrently, and it's important to allow ourselves that time and space to acknowledge feelings of grief within ourselves and to really take that time to mourn the losses that we might experience. So integrating grief and loss, again, it's really natural that we can be changed by our experiences. And so integrating difficult, painful experiences into our lives can be a process of learning about ourselves all over again, relearning the ways that we navigate the world. Part of the process, too, can be acknowledging changes in our identity. You know, who am I now, given that I've gone through this situation? It can be that process of searching for meaning after the loss. Finally, I wanted to provide some suggestions about how we might increase or cultivate post-traumatic growth in our lives. Self-expression or processing and reflecting on our experience through either writing or verbal means. There are so many different types of expression, but just being able to kind of express our experience outwardly can be helpful. Finding our sense of community, finding those supports. So we're not meant to do this alone. Being able to find or surround ourselves with those that can help support us during the growth and change process. Connecting with others who have had similar experiences also can be really beneficial. Establishing goals related to living our lives to the fullest. So maybe creating some goals related to what your life or what you would want your life to look like kind of post-trauma or post this challenging situation. Reducing anxiety and stress, practicing regular self-care. As we know, self-care is a really important, is just really important for us all to be engaged in. Activities such as relaxation techniques, mind-body practices, exercise can really assist with stress reduction and coping with difficult feelings or internal experiences. Of course, working with a mental health professional or clergy member can be another great support of our source of additional support during that process of reestablishing our sense of security. Cognitive behavioral therapies, mindfulness-based stress reduction techniques can also be helpful. And then some additional coping strategies. I always advocate for having at least 2 or 3 different coping strategies that work really well for you. This can be just really great in terms of managing general life stressors in addition to supporting our walk through traumatic or challenging life circumstances. And so some examples of this could include problem-solving techniques, accessing those spiritual or religious resources, utilizing humor and laughter, practicing acceptance, practicing gratitude, or keeping a gratitude journal, etc. So this includes the presentation today. I really hope that some of it was helpful and that some of you are also able to join us for the extended class that we hope to offer in the future. So thank you so much, and I hope that you have a great day.